There was a lot of lightning going on. I was starting to run out of charge getting to my next station. The rain really started to pick up. The wind really started to pick up. I'm getting cold. I'm getting wet. So at this point, it's getting too dangerous to ride. Hey, my friend, this is John, and I'm what some people have labeled as a digital nomad, meaning I work online in different places. And I've been traveling across the country like this in an Airstream travel trailer for the past 3 years. About a year into that journey, I decided to add a Zero SRS all battery electric motorcycle to my setup, and it has completely changed the way I explore new places. In this video, I'm going to take you on a journey of what it's like to live with the Zero SRS motorcycle. I'll share my experiences, both good and bad, and give you an idea of what it's like to travel and explore across different states with an all-electric motorcycle. The Zero SRS is a high-performance electric motorcycle manufactured by Zero Motorcycles in California. It features a powerful and efficient electric motor that can produce 110 horsepower and 140 foot-pounds of torque, giving it a top speed of 124 miles per hour. The bike has a range of up to 187 miles on a single charge, depending on the ride mode and conditions. It comes with a customizable dash, providing the rider with all the necessary information such as speed, battery life, and power usage. The SRS model is a sport tourer motorcycle that comes with advanced suspension, braking, and aerodynamic features, making it a great option for both city and highway riding. Additionally, it's equipped with advanced safety features such as ABS, traction control, and rider modes. It's a great option for those looking for a high-performance motorcycle that is also environmentally friendly, cheap or free to fuel, and at times nothing like a gas-powered motorcycle. Okay, so I'll start off with why I got this bike. So, as I mentioned before, I travel full-time in an Airstream. I'm not traveling as much lately, but at one point I was going across different states. I've traveled to North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, Florida, and then west out to Louisiana, Texas. And I really wanted to explore the cities nearby when I got to these new states, and I wanted to do it in a cost-efficient way that wasn't with a gas guzzler, which would be a truck. If you're a RVer, you obviously have to pull your RV or your Airstream, whatever you're in, with a tow vehicle, and that's most likely going to be a truck. So I had been doing this in a Ford F-150 and then a Ford F-250, so I knew that when I would arrive to campsites in new states, they're not always going to be right next to a city I might want to explore. A lot of the times they're in remote areas, kind of in the middle of nowhere, which can be very beautiful, but they were close enough to a city where I might want to drive there and see what it's like. So the idea was to have another vehicle with me that I could bring along with the travel trailer, the Airstream, that would allow me to explore in a cost-efficient way when I got there. RVers will know that when you get to a campsite or an RV resort, you can travel with your bicycle, you can travel with an e-bike, but it'll only get you so far. So motorcycles, they can fit on the back of a truck while you tow an RV. Another option I could have done was to get a gas-powered motorcycle instead, but I've always been a fan of electric vehicles, and I thought if I'm going to do it, I want to do it with a motorcycle that not only can I charge while I'm at the campsite, you plug it right into the power source when you get somewhere, but I also want to experience what it'd be like to explore on an electric bike. If you're enjoying this video so far, it would mean a lot to me if you could click like and subscribe, interact with this video by commenting. It helps get the video out to more people that might want to learn about this topic. So at the time, I was staying in a place called Green Mountain Park in Lenoir, North Carolina in the Airstream, and I had been searching for a while for a good deal on a bike. I was willing to travel nearly anywhere to get the one that I wanted for a good price, and I had seen that not too far away was a place in Georgia that had the Zero. So I left the Airstream in Lenoir and I hightailed it over to Georgia, picked up the bike with the truck, drove it back, and boy was it a challenge getting it back, because if you've ever been to places in North Carolina, there's a lot of hills there. So I had to have the right ramp to put it on and off the truck, especially on these hilly areas. I definitely had a hard time moving this 500-pound vehicle on and off the truck. So I got that figured out, and the first day that I rode this thing was entirely different than my experience with a motorcycle before. The last bike I had before that was a Suzuki GSXR 600. I believe it was a 2003 model. And that's a fast bike, at least it was for me at the time. It had gears, which the Zero doesn't have. And that bike had torque, but nothing like the Zero. My first ride on the bike, I went from 0 to 60. I think it was less than 4 seconds. And I was just shocked how much torque it had. And that was absolutely thrilling. So I couldn't wait to take this bike in different areas. And the other reason I wanted to get this bike was so many times recently I had taken a road trip up from Florida to Ohio and back, and I would always pass through the Smoky Mountains in the Carolinas. And the view along that route, I just wanted to experience it with nothing around me. I wanted to get the full feeling of the air on me and that open feeling that you can only get on a motorcycle. So from then on, it was like a mission for me to travel through the Smoky Mountains on a bike. So by now I've taken this bike to a few areas nearby in North Carolina, and my next destination I had planned was to be back in Florida, in the state where I got the Airstream and where I had not ridden this bike yet. And that was a lot of fun. Florida is a great place to ride. It's almost always warm. You're going to feel good. You're going to feel grippy, like you have good control on the bike. And there's a lot of campsites in Florida where you can charge the bike, just like an RV, where you plug in your RV to a power source. You do the same thing with an electric vehicle and an electric bike in this case. But my real learning experience about this bike had not happened until I traveled to my next destination from there, which was Austin, Texas and San Antonio, Texas. Okay, so the first real challenge of this bike, besides getting it on and off of the truck, getting used to the weight of it, getting used to moving it, and the torque of it, which was amazing, was the range. I knew that the bike was going to have different range depending on how fast or slow you go. But that was really put to the test when I was camping with this bike in San Antonio, Texas. So I've had this bike for a few weeks at this time, and I'm getting ready to go from San Antonio to Austin, Texas. Put all my gear on, put a bunch of bags on the bike, make sure I had enough stuff with me, because I knew this would be a long trip. It was going to be a couple hours to get there. And what I didn't know was that when you are traveling or trying to travel a couple hours on this bike at highway speeds, you are going to run out of charge. And that's almost what happened. I was barely stranded on this bike. So here's how it went. I'm riding for about an hour on these very fast roads that were new to me. I'm passing Buc-ee's and all the cool places that you see in Texas. And I look down and I see I've got about 5% charge left, something around there. It was really low. And I'm thinking, all right, I have not charged this bike yet, or even tried to charge this bike anywhere except for at home at my campsite, plugging it into an outlet. I had not yet tried going to a public charging station like ChargePoint or something similar. So I knew I had to do that on this trip, but I didn't yet know that it was going to be somewhat of an emergency finding a public charging station for this bike. I'm pulling over and then looking on the map, seeing if there's any public chargers around that I can stop at that are faster than just a wall outlet, because I knew that if I try to plug into a wall outlet along my way, maybe at a gas station or at a public library, that would take a long time. So it's getting dark by this time. I see on the map a nearby ChargePoint charger. I very slowly crept my way, trying to take side streets to this first charger of mine. I got there literally with 0% left in the tank. I don't know how much I would have really had to travel. The bike was starting to lose power. It started to feel a lot less torquey. It probably would have died any moment. And then when I got there, I had to learn how to use a public charger for the first time. This was a level 2 charger, which was ChargePoint, meaning it would charge the bike in about 4 hours. I charged it up for about an hour, kept going along my way. I'm very low fuel by the time I get to Austin, so I'm like, okay, I'm gonna find a parking garage or something that has a public charger in it. There's no way I'm going to get home anytime soon. I wanted to explore the city anyway, so I plugged it in, knew that I had to wait at least 4 hours if I was going to have any chance of getting home that night, and walked around the city. Austin's a beautiful city. Went and got a taco, had some food, walked around, checked out the lakes nearby, and had a good time. And that was the idea. That's what I wanted to do. I wanted to arrive at a place, walk around while the bike charges, see a new city, and then go back when I was ready. So obviously that was a big day on learning how to do that. And the rest of my time in San Antonio was very beautiful with this bike. I did take it around to other areas. And so one of the biggest lessons learned at this point was to plan your route, knowing what speed you might go, and to make your best prediction on if you need to stop somewhere along the way. So I really put this thing to the test. I took it from Orlando to Fort Lauderdale at least 4, 5, maybe 6 times. And because I saw there were so many charging stations around that area, I wanted to see if I could do this trip knowing I had to stop a couple times to charge for free or really low cost. And that trip, which is over 200 miles, takes about 12 hours. And I don't really recommend someone doing it on a bike like this. It's not really meant for that distance. And one of the last times I did that trip, I was going from Fort Lauderdale to Orlando, and there was a tornado warning in the area near Lake Okeechobee, which was about halfway along that route. And I decided to take the risk and see if I could at least drive around it or drive through it. I had ridden in the rain before. I didn't think the weather was going to be too bad to ride through. I kept an eye on the radar, and in real life, this storm was much more intense than what it showed on the radar. There was a lot of lightning going on. I was starting to run out of charge getting to my next station. The rain really started to pick up. The wind really started to pick up. I'm getting cold. I'm getting wet. So at this point, it's getting too dangerous dangerous to ride, and so I pulled over to the closest place I could, which was just some public park along US 27 highway. I just needed to get out of this rain, which was really oppressive, this lightning, which was getting pretty scary. So I go into this shelter, I pull the bike under this shelter, and so I'm really hoping that there's a wall outlet here. A lot of the times if I had to pull over, if I just wasn't going to quite reach my destination, I could pull over pretty much anywhere and plug into the wall. But in that time, there was nowhere to plug in, and I just had to wait for the weather to clear. So those were some of the growing pains that I had to go through with this bike. But on the other hand, the benefits and the joys of this thing were much more. There really has been no maintenance for this bike. You do have to watch the tension on the belt that it drives the back wheel. And there's other little things that you have to pay attention to make sure things are tight, in good working order, but there's no oil changes, there's no maintaining a chain like the bike I had before, and it's very easy to ride. When you get back on, there's no shifter on the left hand, there's no gears on the left foot. Almost every time I was at a stoplight or I would stop to charge somewhere, people would ask me questions, and I welcomed it. I thought it was cool. I like talking about it. I would get asked all the time, oh, how far does it go? How fast does it go? Is it quick? How long does it take to charge? It's a real head turner of a bike. You don't see an exhaust pipe, and it is a cool looking bike in my opinion. So all the time people would wonder why, how come you passed by me and I didn't hear you? Well, I'd say, okay, it's electric. So speaking of another difference between an all electric motorcycle and a gas powered motorcycle is the sound and the rumble. Everyone knows that when you hear like a Harley or a V-twin motorcycle or even a sport bike that has a less noisy engine, you're going to hear something at least, especially when you accelerate. But with this, when you're on the bike, instead of hearing the engine or the noise on the exhaust, you hear the road and you hear wind. So something I didn't expect was it really matters what kind of helmet you have. Depending on how fast you go, if you have a helmet that really reduces wind noise, you hear little to nothing when you're on the road. If you have a noisier helmet that the wind kind of whistles through, then you're going to hear that. This thing to me kind of sounds like a quiet jet engine, especially when you accelerate. And when you're going really slow too, it kind of makes a low whine. It's a really unique sound, but it's not loud. So I end up putting speakers on mine to play music just for safety so people can hear me coming. And another great benefit of this bike is it's been really reliable. Starting and stopping the bike is a really easy process. You just turn that key, display goes on, and you just go. I really like the ride modes too. If you want to ride slower and more efficiently, you can go on eco mode, you can go on rain mode, and then you can make your own modes and customize them to determine how much torque you want, top speed, things like that. So in conclusion, would I recommend an all battery electric motorcycle for someone who might be RVing, Airstreaming, who has a motorhome, anything like that? Absolutely, yes, I would. If you're someone who you don't want to take your big truck around to travel and explore, when you get to a new campsite or an RV resort, your second vehicle is right there with you that you can put in the bed of the truck, and then you can also attach your travel trailer or fifth wheel behind you, and you can plug it in where you're staying at your campsite or your RV resort. Just keep in mind, like all motorcycles, it's a very powerful machine. Always wear your helmet, always wear your gear, be safe, ride safe, and enjoy it for what it is, which is a tool for freedom and to explore. Alright, happy and safe riding. Thanks for watching this video, and I'd love to hear from you guys if you have experience with this bike or a similar vehicle, or if you're using it as a digital nomad or someone who might be traveling a lot too. I hope you enjoyed this video. I'll see you on the next one.